Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Taylor thinks Steffy might be pregnant after Finn gives Luna a hug. According to the Thursday, February 27th recap of The Bold and the Beautiful, Taylor Hayes suspected Steffy Forrester was pregnant when John Finnegan gave Luna Nozawa a hug. Steffy thought Finn was going to save more lives at the Cliff home since he made a suggestion about something he had to accomplish. Although Steffy was clearly unhappy about the Luna situation, she reassured Finn that they would handle it in the same manner as they handled Sheila Sharp. Finn soon returned to the prison, seeking explanations and claiming to be Luna's father. After saying something about Luna's home arrest, the prison official left since he thought he had revealed too much. Later, Finn received a text from an unidentified number in his workplace, telling him where Luna was being held. When Finn saw that Luna was at Bill Spencer's estate after looking up the address, he hurried over. Luna opened the door herself because she thought Dario, also known as Remy Price, may be returning. Luna stumbled out an apology for her actions after yelling at cousin Finn's entrance. At first, Finn's face was stern, but then he startled Luna by embracing her. Luna gave him a hug in return as she recovered from the shock of what Finn was doing. When Taylor returned to the Cliff house, he could sense that Steffy was upset, and she affirmed that Hayes Forrester Finnegan and Kelly Spencer were okay. Taylor questioned whether Steffy was pregnant, though, as she made hints that it did have anything to do with having kids. They were dealing with an unwanted family member, despite Steffy's insistence that she wasn't. Steffy stated that Poppy Nozawa, Romy Park, was the woman from Finn's past who had exploited him when he was 18. Taylor was shocked to learn that Poppy had slept with her adopted nephew, but according to Steffy, it wasn't the worst. Ridge Forrester discussed the fragrance line launch that was taking place today with Eric Forrester, Zend Forrester Dominguez, and Daphne Rose at the Forrester home during Thursday's B&B program. Although Eric was confident it would be successful, he was concerned about the message it would convey to Carter Walton about the success of his treacherous attempts. Ridge predicted that Carter would change his mind and begin to realize that Hope Logan was brainwashing him. Hope attempted to focus on the debut of the fragrance line at Forrester Creations, while Carter was preoccupied with his remorse about stealing the business. Hope wanted to give Carter credit for that launch's success after the first reaction arrived. Carter was obviously not in the mood to celebrate, so Daphne encouraged him to open up to her after Hope left for a meeting with Zend. Keep checking back for updates on the consequences, as spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful indicate that Carter is about to give in to temptation with Daphne. Standing at the edge of the Cliff House patio, Steffy Forrester gazed out at the horizon while the ocean breeze whipped through her hair. It was difficult for her to breathe because of the physical impact of the news she had just been given. She had always been a strong, tough lady who took on obstacles head-on and emerged stronger as a result. However, this was unique. This was about more than just her, it was about her family, her future, and the fragile equilibrium of her existence that had been upended. She required direction, clarity, and most of all, her mother. Her confidant, her support, and the one person who could make sense of even the most chaotic events had always been Taylor Hayes. And Steffy needed her now more than ever before. Steffy reached for her phone and immediately dialed Taylor's number. She clutched the phone to her ear, her fingers quivering a little as the ringing tone reverberated through the quiet. Steffy felt a knot form in her throat when Taylor's voice finally emerged, warm and recognizable. She said, "Mom," with a little crack in her voice. "I must see you. Would you be able to visit?" Steffy could just hear her mother's worry in her quiet when there was a pause on the other end of the line. Without hesitation, Taylor answered, "Of course, sweetheart. I will arrive as soon as possible." Steffy walked the living room while she waited for Taylor to come, her mind aflutter with 1,000 ideas. She was completely disturbed by the news she had received earlier that day and wasn't sure how to react to it, much less what to do next. She had always taken great satisfaction in being in charge and keeping everything together. But she was afraid of this was beyond of her hands. Steffi had a surge of relief when Taylor eventually showed up. She had always found solace in her mother's presence, knowing that she was never alone, no matter how bad things got. After a quick glance at her daughter's face, Taylor seized her in a firm embrace. "Steffi, what's the matter?" With anxiety in her voice, she inquired. "You appear to have seen a ghost." Steffi inhaled deeply as she withdrew from the embrace, attempting to regain her balance. Her voice trembled as she confessed, "I don't even know where to start. Mom, something occurred. Something significant. And I'm at a loss on what to do." After guiding her to the couch, Taylor took her hand and sat down next to her. She stated resolutely, "We'll work it out together, whatever it is. Just let me know what's happening." After a little pause, Steffi inhaled deeply once more and started talking. As she told her mother the news, the burden of it suddenly lifted, and she blurted out the words quickly. She opened up to Taylor about the startling discovery, the effects it had on her family, and the anxiety and doubt that had been eating at her ever since. She kept a close eye on her mother's face while she spoke, looking for any indication of disapproval or disappointment. However, she only saw compassion and love, which gave her the willpower to press on. After Steffi finished, there was a long pause while Taylor took in what she had just heard. Steffi could see her mother's thoughts racing, as she often did when attempting to decide on the best course of action. At last, Taylor spoke in a steady, quiet voice. "There's a lot to process here," she remarked. "However, you must first realize that you are not alone. As a family, we'll overcome this together." As Steffi nodded, tears began to form in her eyes. She said, "Mom, I just don't know what to do. Everything is altered by this. I'm also afraid." Reaching out, Taylor gently moved a lock of hair out of Steffi's face. "It's acceptable to feel afraid," she added quietly. "However, Steffi, you underestimate your strength. Despite the numerous obstacles you have encountered throughout your life, you have consistently triumphed. This is not any different." With fear and frustration rising to the surface, Steffi shook her head. "However," she added, "this isn't just about me. Everyone is impacted by this, Dad, Hope, Finn, and the children. How can I deal with this without causing harm to the people I care about?" With a contemplative gaze, Taylor let out a sigh. "The fact is, you have no control over other people's reactions," she stated. "However, you have control over how you respond to this. Steffi, you must be truthful. Both with yourself and those around you. It is more difficult to heal secrets the longer they are kept bottled up, since they tend to do more harm than good." Steffi dreaded the idea of being really honest, even though she knew her mother was correct. "What if I am hated by them?" Her voice was hardly heard as she whispered. As her gaze grew softer, Taylor drew Steffi into another embrace. "They could never despise you," she asserted. "Steffi, you are a member of their family. They will always love you. Furthermore, if they are upset, it is not because they don't care about you, but rather because they do." Steffi held on to her mother as the tears she had been suppressing suddenly came out. She let herself experience the full force of her feelings, the terror, the shame, the uncertainty, for the first time since she had heard the news. She also experienced a slight sensation of relief as she sobbed, as though letting go was the first step toward recovery. Taylor gave her a comforting smile and a tissue when she eventually pulled away. "Now," she added, her voice becoming more determined, "let's come up with a strategy. Steffi, you're not alone in this. Together, we will tackle this one step at a time." Taylor worked with Steffi to plan a strategy throughout the course of the following hour. They discussed who should be informed, how to deliver the news, and how to deal with the consequences. By the time they were finished, Steffi felt a little more in control of the issue because to Taylor's cool-headed, reasonable approach. At least she had a strategy now, even though it wouldn't be simple. Taylor turned to Steffi and shot her a knowing glance as she prepared to depart. "You will overcome this," she remarked. "You are stronger than you realize, even though it doesn't feel that way right now. And I will always be here for you, no matter what." With a newfound sense of resolve, Steffi nodded. "I'm grateful, Mom," she said. "Without you, I don't know what I'd do." With a smile, Taylor gave her a final embrace. She said, "You won't ever have to find out. Go get some sleep now. We'll face the new day together tomorrow." Steffi felt a glimmer of optimism as she saw her mother go. Although the path ahead would be challenging, she felt confident that she could manage any challenge with her mother by her side. She felt as though she could breathe again for the first time in days. And for the moment, that was plenty. With a strong moral compass and a strong sense of commitment to those she loved, Hope Logan had always been a woman of principle. Torn between the comforting familiarity of her past and the alluring prospect of a new future, her life had recently become a flurry of emotions. Carter Walton, a man who had subtly grown to be one of the most significant figures in her life, was at the center of this emotional maelstrom. They had first connected as friends, a tie created by respect for one another and a shared set of hardships. However, over time, it developed into something more profound than any of them had expected. Now that the stakes were higher than ever, Hope had to decide whether to fight for Carter, a question she never imagined having to consider. The solution wasn't straightforward. For years, Hope's life had been centered around her relationship with Liam Spencer, her husband who she had an intermittent affair with and the father of her daughter, Beth. Though it had also been characterized by treachery and uncertainty, their love story had been full of passion, grief, and innumerable second chances. Hope had always maintained the belief that they could work things out and create a secure, contented life together in spite of everything. Recently, however, that hope had started to falter. She felt disoriented and as though she was always waiting for the other shoe to drop because of Liam's indecision and his continued relationship with Steffi. Then there was Carter. Throughout her life, Carter had been a dependable and solid presence who had always supported her in her hour of need. He had been there for her during some of her lowest points, lending her a sympathetic ear and a shoulder to cry on when the burden of the world became too much to carry. Their friendship had developed into something more over time, a bond that was both surprising and indisputable. Hope had made an effort to disregard it and put it aside in favor of the life she and Liam had created. However, the more time she spent with Carter, the more difficult it was to ignore the fact that she was attracted to him. She had strong, complex emotions that she wasn't sure how to handle. The pivotal moment had occurred when Carter had revealed his affections for her in a private time at Forrester Creations. Hope had been left reeling by the honest and vulnerable admission. She hadn't known how to react and had been taken by surprise. There was a part of her that wanted to flee, to go back to the security of her life with Liam. She had attempted to ignore the part of her that wanted to stay and see if they could start something new with Carter. She had never thought she would be at this crossroads, and it left her feeling conflicted in ways she couldn't quite put into words. Hope was again wrestling with the dilemma that had been bothering her for weeks. Would she fight for Carter? She was sitting in her living room, looking out at the rain-soaked streets of Los Angeles. She felt a pang of grief she hadn't anticipated as she considered leaving him and abandoning the bond they had formed. But it was just as terrible to consider fighting for him, risking everything she had with Liam. She was aware that her choice would have a significant impact on everyone she cared about, not just herself. As Hope considered her alternatives, her thoughts were racing. On the one hand, there was Liam, the man she had always dreamed of spending her life with, the father of her child, and the man she had loved for so long. Although their relationship had not been ideal, it was familiar, and that familiarity offered some solace. However, Carter was a man who had showed her a different type of love, one that was stable, unflinching, and devoid of the drama that had always characterized her relationship with Liam. For the first time in a long time, she felt appreciated, understood, and seen with Carter. She wasn't sure if she was prepared to let go of the emotion. As the hours went by, Hope kept playing back the exchanges she had with Carter, trying to make sense of what they had spoken. She reflected on his gaze, his feelings for her, and the fact that he had always supported her through thick and thin. She envisioned the life they could lead together, one based on respect, trust, and assistance to one another. Then she remembered Liam, the life they had already created together, and the love that had at one time served as the cornerstone of all she valued. She felt conflicted in ways she hadn't anticipated because it was an impossible decision. Ultimately, Hope realized she couldn't continue to live in uncertainty. In one way or another, she had to decide. Even though she was afraid, she knew that she owed it to Carter and to herself to be open about how she felt. She was unable to continue dragging him along and offering him hope for a future she wasn't certain she could provide. Furthermore, she couldn't continue to act as though her connection with Liam was sufficient when her heart was telling her otherwise. Hope took a deep breath before picking up her phone and calling Carter. As she waited for him to respond, her pulse raced in her chest, and she felt a chill go through her body when she heard his voice. Her voice trembled a little as she said, "Hey. Can we have a conversation?" Hope could just feel the tension in the air as the other end of the line paused. Carter said, "Of course," in a kind but cautious tone. "What are you thinking about?" In an attempt to regain her composure, Hope inhaled deeply. She started, her voice trembling, "I've been thinking a lot about us. Almost anything. And I simply must tell you the truth, Carter. I have feelings for you, and I can't keep acting like I don't. Furthermore, I can't continue to act as though my relationship with Liam is sufficient, because it isn't. No more." Hope's heart raced as she waited for Carter's response during the lengthy stillness on the other end of the telephone. His voice was gentle, but full of emotion when he eventually spoke. "Hopefully, I'm at a loss for words. You don't realize how much I've always loved you. However, I never intended to obstruct your relationship with Liam. I never intended to be the cause of your life's collapse." Hope shook her head, her eyes brimming with sorrow. "Carter, you're not the cause," she stated firmly. "I think I've been able to see things more clearly, because of you. You've shown me what it's like to be with someone who appreciates me for who I am and who genuinely sees me. I don't want to lose that, either. I'd rather not lose you." Hope could hear the emotion in Carter's voice when he finally spoke after another delay. "I hope that I don't lose you either. However, I don't want you to jump into something you're not prepared for, because this is a major decision. I love you too much to allow you make a decision you'll come to regret." Despite knowing that Carter couldn't see her, Hope nodded. "I understand," she murmured quietly. "Furthermore, I'm not claiming that this will be simple. However, I'm sick of clinging to things that no longer bring me joy and of living in the past. Carter, I want to take a chance. On us. On a shared future. However, I must know if you are prepared to battle for this as well." Hope briefly questioned whether she had made a mistake during the protracted stillness. But then Carter's steady, powerful voice could be heard. He said, "I hope you know that I have been fighting for you since the day I met you. And I won't stop just yet. I'm right here with you if you're prepared to take this step. Each and every stage." When Hope realized she wasn't alone in this, she felt a surge of relief and the burden of her choice lifted. With Carter by her side, they could overcome any obstacles that might arise. She was aware that there might be challenges along the way, so it wouldn't be simple. However, she had a feeling of purpose and clarity for the first time in a long time. She was prepared to stand up for Carter and their shared future. She also recognized that the fight was worthwhile regardless of the outcome. Honesty, fidelity, and the purity of marriage were all things that Finn Finnegan had always treasured. He had thought his marriage to Steffy Forrester, which was based on respect, trust, and love, would last forever. However, their marriage's foundation had just started to crumble, and despite his best efforts to patch it, the cracks only seemed to get deeper. Their problems had grown too much for Finn to handle, and he now found himself at a crossroads, having to decide whether to dissolve his marriage to Steffy, a choice he never imagined having to make. He didn't make the decision lightly, but as he stood in the silent seclusion of their house, he couldn't get rid of the thought that it was the only way to go. As is often the case, the issues had begun modestly. Their relationship had started to deteriorate due to misunderstandings, lost time, and life's unavoidable stresses. However, things didn't start to fall apart until the truth about Sheila Carter's return to their life was revealed. Finn's original mother, Sheila, was a chaotic force that constantly caused havoc and devastation. From the start, Steffy had made it plain that she didn't want to interact with Sheila, and Finn had complied. However, Finn was caught between his allegiance to Steffy and his own complex feelings for his mother when Sheila reappeared, eager to get back in touch with her son. He and Steffy had been at odds for a while, and the distance between them only widened with time. Steffy had reacted angrily and uncompromisingly to Sheila's homecoming. She expected Finn to support her without hesitation because she had made it clear that she wanted Sheila out of their lives permanently. But it wasn't that easy for Finn. He couldn't simply ignore Sheila since she was his mother, despite her flaws and dangers. He had made an effort to convey to Steffy that he needed to figure out how to handle this circumstance on his own terms. However, Steffy's tolerance had run out, and they were now having more and more heated arguments. Resentment and mistrust had taken the place of the love that had once formed the foundation of their relationship, making it seem like a faraway memory. Finn had felt more alone than ever after a particularly intense disagreement that had reached a breaking point. Steffy had accused him of prioritizing his mother's interests over their marriage and allegedly picking Sheila over her. Finn had attempted to defend himself by stating that he was merely looking for a means to make up with the two most significant women in his life and wasn't picking sides. Steffy, however, had refused to listen. Her remarks had struck a deep chord, leaving Finn feeling hopeless and unable to move on. He had started to question whether their marriage could be saved for the first time. As the days went by, Finn began to distance himself from Steffy and turn inward in an attempt to understand his emotions. He would always love Steffy, but he couldn't deny the increasing feeling that they weren't the same couple they had been. Everything else seemed to fall apart without the trust that had once been the cornerstone of their relationship. Finn had always thought that love was sufficient to get beyond any challenge, but he wasn't so sure now. He was deeply saddened by the idea of divorcing, but he couldn't get rid of the thought that it might be the only way they could both find peace. Finn was determined to dissolve the marriage, but not because he was angry or spiteful. For Steffy, their son Hayes, and himself, it was a love-based decision. He couldn't handle the idea of giving Hayes a tense and bitter upbringing because he understood that continuing to live in a marriage that was no longer healthy would only lead to more suffering down the road. Finn had higher expectations for himself, Steffy, and his son. He wasn't sure whether he could still have a life with Steffy that was based on love, trust, and respect for one another. Finn reflected on the life they had created together, the love, the laughing, and the moments of unadulterated happiness that had once characterized their relationship as he sat in the peace of their house. He realized that clinging to the past would not alter the reality of their present, even though it was painful to consider letting go of all of that. Finn deserved a partner who could embrace him for who he was, flaws and all, and Steffy deserved a partner who could provide her with the love and dedication she required. Finn had a sense of dread at the prospect of speaking with Steffy. Although he was aware that it would be among the most difficult things he would ever have to do, he also understood that it was essential. He couldn't continue to act as though everything was all right and that they could simply return to their previous situation. In actuality, they had both evolved, and their marriage had followed suit. No matter how unpleasant it might be, it was time to confront that reality. When Finn finally plucked up the nerve to approach Steffy, he saw her in the living room, looking up at him with a cautious expression. He stated, "We need to talk," in a steady yet passionate voice. Steffy nodded and squinted as she prepared for what was about to happen. Finn inhaled deeply as he searched for the appropriate words to describe his feelings. "Steffy, you are loved. I always will. However, I believe that we have reached a point where we are no longer compatible. We no longer have faith in one another, and I'm not sure whether that can be fixed." Steffy's eyes welled up with tears, but she remained silent and let Finn to go on. "I've looked for a means to close the distance between us and make this work. The fact is, though, that I can't be the spouse you require while I'm caught between you and Sheila all the time. And you deserve someone who is willing to give you their entire being. I don't think I can do that any longer." Steffy's look was a mix of hurt and rage, and there was a long pause while she processed what he had said. "That's it, then?" Finally, with a shaky voice, she said. "Are you simply giving up on us?" With tears welling up in his own eyes, Finn shook his head. Steffy, I'm not giving up. I'm letting go. Because I care too much for you to continue clinging to something that is causing us both pain. I want Hayes to grow up in a loving, peaceful environment, and I want you to be happy. If we remain together, I don't think we can give him that. Steffy averted her gaze and shook her shoulders, fighting back tears. She resisted Finn's attempt to comfort her because her pain was too intense. Her voice broke as she murmured, I can't believe this is happening. I believed we were together forever. Her comments broke Finn's heart, but he knew he couldn't give up. I thought so too, he said. However, sometimes eternity isn't what we anticipate. And that's all right. Steffy, that doesn't imply we didn't succeed. It simply indicates that we are human. Steffy had a range of feelings as the truth of Finn's choice set in, including dread, grief, rage, and a strong desire for the life they had previously led together. But she knew in her heart that Finn was correct. Remaining together would just delay the inevitable, because their marriage had turned into a source of suffering rather than happiness. Even if it meant going it alone, it was time to let go and find a new way forward. Although it wasn't simple, Finn was adamant that he and Steffy should divorce. They made a terrible but ultimately selfless choice out of love, one that would help them both recover and find the happiness they so richly deserve. Finn couldn't help but feel hopeful as they stood there, facing the end of their marriage, for himself, Hayes, and Steffy. Because sometimes the first step to a fresh start is letting go.